You've probably heard me say in a previous episode, stand your sacred ground. But what exactly does that mean? In this episode, we are going to dive into why people puff up and why they shrink. Welcome to the Abundance Hack Show, Season 4, where we are focusing on mastery. The last 3 seasons, I gave you the information. Now, we're focusing on integrating it into our lives and embodying it. If you are ready to master your thoughts, emotions, and patterns to feel whole, fulfilled, and really grounded in who you are without dimming your shine so you can live the abundant life that you truly desire, then you are in the right place. Hey M&Ms, thank you for tuning in to the Abundance Hack Show. What are you manifesting in your life today? Oh my goodness, let me just tell you, life has been so crazy. So if you've been listening for a while, you know that I went through what felt like a dark night of the soul. It very much so was a dark night of the soul. And now that I am out of that phase and I'm stepping into the new chapter, things are picking up momentum so fast. And a term that I learned along the way, because I've done a lot of therapy, a lot of training, a lot of inner work, a lot of journaling. So I did the Brene Brown Dare to Lead certification, and something Brene Brown says has really helped me stay grounded as the momentum picks up as I'm stepping into this new chapter of life. So I say it all the time. I'm sure you've heard me say it, but stand your sacred ground. So Brene Brown says, stand your sacred ground, don't puff up, don't shrink. And if you've been listening to me for a while, you know that I've always felt like I've had to tone myself down for the comfort of others. So when we get triggered, we tend to puff up because we get defensive and we get into our ego. And then for someone like myself who has a big personality, I tend to shrink to not make other people feel uncomfortable around me. So I wanted to explain exactly what stand your sacred ground means, and I tried to find a good definition of it. And as I was reading the definition, I read the whole entire article, and this article explains it perfectly. So I'm just going to read exactly what it says because I literally could not have said it any better. When we are feeling anxious, insecure, criticized, ashamed, or threatened, we all have a default response to protect ourselves. Sometimes we shrink. We make ourselves small, apologize when we're not at fault, hide our own needs, wants, and feelings, or try to become invisible. Sometimes we puff up, become defensive, refuse to take responsibility, pretend that we're something that we're not or better than those around us. These are both understandable responses. We learned them for a reason, and at some point in life, they kept us safe. But sometimes we find ourselves stuck in these patterns that keep us from staying true to ourselves, feeling seen in relationships, or being able to see other people in relationships. They keep us from being vulnerable. And without vulnerability, we cannot experience authentic connection. Standing your sacred ground means that you allow yourself to be seen exactly as you are without any need to hide or defend. It's a stance that says, I am enough, just the way I am, even with my imperfections. It means you can stay true to yourself and confident in who you are, even if someone doesn't like you or what you have to say. It means that you don't have to pretend to be something that you're not in order to be accepted. It means that you remain rooted in what you believe while simultaneously seeking to understand the other person's position. That part is so important. It also means owning your imperfections and having the courage to take responsibility for your mistakes, all while maintaining your sense of worthiness. It even allows for new information to shift your perspective without feeling like you're giving up yourself or losing in a zero-sum game. Sacred ground is firm, but not rigid. When you stand your sacred ground, you also empower other people to be vulnerable and allow themselves to be seen exactly as they are. This paves the way for authentic connection in our relationships. It opens the room for deeper communication and knowing of each other. Is that not amazing? I was just like, I literally cannot explain it any better. It's perfectly put. And, you know, I did an episode on ego, and I don't think ego is necessarily a bad thing. Our ego is designed to protect us. So when we puff up, it's not because we're just trying to be douchebags. It's because we're trying to protect ourselves. We're trying to protect our vulnerability. And sometimes we feel like we have to overcompensate or defend who we are or how we are, or defend, what we feel. And as far as shrinking, you know how I feel about toning yourself down for the comfort of others, but shrinking could be not speaking your truth, not standing up for yourself, not setting healthy boundaries, and not truly being who you are because of the fear of judgment or the fear of abandonment. If you feel like you are who you truly are and people get to see that part of you that you're hiding, you may feel like they're not going to accept you, and then they'll abandon you. So it runs really deep, but just reminding yourself when you're in situations, don't puff up, don't shrink. Stand your sacred ground. So a couple of questions that I think is really good when you have that stance of I am enough, so I'm going to stand my sacred ground. I'm not going to puff up. I'm not going to shrink. A couple of good questions to ask yourself is, am I communicating from a place of love? Ego doesn't come from a place of love. So am I communicating from a place of love? Am I allowing myself to be vulnerable and really express my truth? And am I setting healthy boundaries? Sometimes we're afraid to say no, for example. If someone asks you to do something and one, you don't want to do it because we shouldn't have to do anything we don't want to do. I mean, other than like work and pay bills and pay taxes. Or sometimes we want to do it, but we simply don't have the capacity to. And I know I'm in a space right now where my schedule is full, overbooked. So I have had to decline some requests. And being able to do that, standing your sacred ground and not feeling bad about it. And sometimes, we are going to feel bad because we want to do all the things, and we definitely don't want to disappoint people. And we also don't want to take on more than what we're able to handle, because, I always say you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of you first. And I believe in serving from your overflow. So setting those healthy boundaries, making sure you're prioritizing your self-care, saying no if you have to say no. So what are some ways to know that you're not standing your sacred ground? So number one is people pleasing. And people pleasing can look a lot of different ways, but if you're setting healthy boundaries, then usually you're not people pleasing. Saying yes when you really don't want to do something, and going with the flow out of fear of not being complicated. So I've had a situation like this come up recently where I had to stand up for myself, and I did feel some type of way. I'm like, oh my God, do they think I'm complicated? Are they not going to want to work with me? Because we have so much programming, especially women, to not speak up for ourselves and not ask for what we feel like we deserve or what we're worth. So sometimes we just go with the flow out of the fear of not being complicated or not being difficult. And, it kind of goes to show, like, when someone goes to a restaurant and their order is wrong, there's some people that will speak up and there's some people that will not. And then there's some people that get upset. So you can speak up and be very pleasant. To me, that's standing your sacred ground. So if you don't say something, you're shrinking because you don't want to be complicated. But if you paid for something, you deserve to get what you asked for. So stand your sacred ground, stand up for yourself, and be pleasant about it. So being rude about it would be puffing up. So that's the example that came to mind. We can speak up and we can speak our truth and we can ask for what we want and what we desire in a pleasant way. Sometimes society and our parents and our different upbringings has taught us to not speak up, especially women. people used to say back in the day, women should be seen and not heard. Ooh, let me not get started there. But even though that was a long time ago, a lot of that is still programmed in our subconscious. And me being a person of color, anytime I speak up for myself, there used to be a subconscious fear of, I don't want to seem like an angry Black woman. So I wouldn't speak up. And here's the thing. We all have the right to speak up for ourselves. We all have the right to speak our truth. We all have the right to express ourselves. There's so much power in our voice, and we can do it in a pleasant way. It doesn't have to be rude, nasty. It doesn't have to come from a place of ego. It doesn't have to be defensive. We can learn to communicate from a place of love, from our heart. And it's going to be received so much better. Usually when you communicate from a place of love, no matter what you're saying, the person receives it because it's not coming from ego. So I used to give this example with a ball. Like if you throw like a ball really hard up against a wall, it's going to come back at you really hard. But if you roll it gently, usually it'll be received, and it may not even roll back to you. Maybe it'll roll back slowly or gently, but maybe it'll just be completely received, and that's the goal. So learning to come from a place of love, learning to communicate from your heart, and that requires vulnerability. And usually our ego is trying to protect us from being vulnerable because we don't want to be hurt. But there's so much power in vulnerability. I think vulnerability is the true strength rather than the defensiveness. It could appear when you puff up that you're the strong one, but it requires more courage to be vulnerable than it does to communicate from a place of ego. So it runs deep, but it's something that I have been reminding myself of as I step into this next phase and this next chapter of my life. Stand your sacred ground. I'm setting bigger goals for myself. I'm going for bigger things. And when you go for bigger things and you're putting yourself in bigger circles, you will have situations where people will not know you or understand your desires or whatever the case may be. And you will have to speak your truth. You will have to stand up for yourself to make sure that you are getting what you feel like you deserve, getting what you desire, and doing that from a place of love. So I always check myself. So you guys know I can be sassy. I can be a little feisty. But I always make sure, like, okay, am I communicating this from a place of love? And to me, that is part of standing your sacred ground and really just knowing your worth. And your worth sits in your solar plexus. So doing some solar plexus check-ins. So checking into your solar plexus, checking into your heart. So what I like to do when I check in is place one hand on my heart chakra and one hand on my solar plexus. So your solar plexus is located above your belly button. So placing your hand on those 2 points, your hands, and breathing into your body. So we're so disconnected from our bodies these days. And when you disconnect from your body, you also disconnect from your intuition. And we spend a lot of time in our heads and not in our hearts. So this is a way to connect to your heart. This is a way to connect to your body. This is a way to connect to your intuition. I invite you to start to do this. When you feel like you need a check-in, am I standing my sacred ground? Take a moment, place one hand on your heart chakra, one hand on your solar plexus, and breathe into your body, breathe into your hands. Feel them expand as you fill up your belly and fill up your chest with air. Take a few deep breaths and then really ask yourself, am I coming from a place of love? Am I puffing up? Am I shrinking? And give yourself permission to be. We hear all the time that no one is perfect, and we don't actually strive to be perfect. We strive to be loved and accepted. We puff up when we feel like we have to fight for that acceptance, and we shrink when we feel like we're too much or too different and we want to blend in. Give yourself permission to just be who you truly are, your imperfect, magical self. And think about it. If magic blended in, would it be considered magic? Mic drop, M&Ms. That's all I have to say. Like, really sit with that. Really sit with that. Original quote by Niajae. But seriously, if magic blended in, would it be considered magic? So let your magic shine. The world needs your magic. Don't hide who you are. Don't hide who you are. So that's my message for you all. I would absolutely love to hear your feedback. And then I also have some healing music in the background. Let me know how you felt listening to this episode. Did you feel amazing? And was the music in the background soothing for you? Let me know, because if it's something that you love, I will continue doing it. I love it. I feel all tingly inside. So I am loving it. Let me know if you love it as well. You can reach out to me on Instagram at Niajae, Niajae. And until next time, be decadent. Thank you for tuning in to the Abundance Hack Show. I would love to hear from you. Leave your comments and questions, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our yummy episodes. Every time you leave a 5-star rating or review, I do my happy dance.